You like the low oscillator noises from my synths.
I do. I
I
like
listened to
that
some Clyde.
frequency.
I went back and listened to the Clyde album from the song Lidocaine. I listened to a couple other tracks on there today too.
Uh-huh.
And now I see why you like the low synths, because there's a lot of that, like, not maybe not that exact instrument, but that vibe shows
Yeah.
up a lot on a bunch of tracks.
Yeah.
All right, so we're low synthed in. What are we talking about today?
Discipline, correct?
Discipline. Is that what you said?
Discipline.
I like. Is that a thing that you just made up right now?
It is.
That should be the name of the episode.
Discipline.
I have an activity
All right.
for us to participate in here. You don't
I
have to
like
do
it.
much except answer.
Okay.
I am going. So we've been talking about discipline. We've walked through our lives, the day to day of our lives, and a little bit of each of our backstory on the extent to which we are disciplined now and how we got there. Uh, I would like to. I'd like to take an opportunity to potentially experiment on my life to make my life more disciplined, so that I too can describe myself to people as being very disciplined, like Terry. And I've created a number of basically self improvement items. So, for example, um, do 1,000 push ups. It's not a real example, but that would be the type of example. Or keep the laundry off the bathroom floor. So they range from small to medium. I wouldn't say any of these are particularly big in scale, but I think that these are changes that I have brainstormed for myself that may lead to a better, well, let's say this, they'll lead to a more disciplined life, where there will be the discipline that leads to a better life in some way. And they're categorized. Do you want to hear the categories? You don't
I
have to
do.
remember them all. Okay. The categories are house and home, leisure suits,
I get the double entendre there, but I like it.
society,
Society.
just all of it,
Yeah.
emotional acumen, aging gracefully, aka clean living for hard bodies. Uh, and I prefer to spend on experiences. These are the categories. So the way this is going to work is pick a category, and then I'll give you an item, and basically we're going to get through and then I need you to weigh in. Is that a thing worth pursuing? I'd like to hear your thought process out loud as to roughly where you would rank this. And as we go through this, I'm going to rank these per your ranking. Keep notes as to where you rank them, and then at any point you can ask me, what was my ranking? Where do these compare? And then we'll come back to kind of what the top 5 you've arrived at for things that you think I should change in my life.
I like it.
But it's multiple choice. I'm not just open-endedly asking you to change my life. Number 2. Do you need a reminder of the categories?
I'll have leisure suits for 1,000, please.
Leisure suits. Okay. Um, this is a category about how I spend my free time. So the first item I'm going to say is play more music, or some variation on that, right? So it could be play more music, it could be intentional about the music, it could be have a scheduled music time. But we talked about what my music life looks like now, and it's not particularly, I wouldn't say it's disciplined. It's routine. There is a lot of music that I play, but it's not terribly repetitive, in the sense that I'm not doing the same thing over and over again. It's kind of like popped in here and there. More of an ever present fallback than it is a piece of the day.
So what is your, not objective, but what is this just strictly a question of leisure activity for a brain dump? Or is there, do you view it as a potential outlet for a creative outlet? Like, is it just to to get away and substitute for scrolling Instagram reels, or is it that you hope to build a creative portfolio?
Uh, I'm gonna say here that it's less about building a creative portfolio because that is an active labor, and the category leisure suits is specifically about activities partaken for relaxation and pleasure.
But good point, because to me, I do want to build a creative portfolio, but it is still an activity of leisure and pleasure.
I don't think so. On the ranking of creative things that I do, which ones are more like work and which ones are more like just pure fun? Music is pretty far towards more like work that is fun. Drawing is closer to, just plain fun. Drawing almost never feels like work to me. I mean, I don't have like a large portfolio of really nice drawings, but I think that basically I don't put work into drawing and visual arts, and I do that exclusively as busy hands. Like the same, it's the same impulse as I'm going to sit here and I'm going to scroll aimlessly or I'm going to watch TV, but instead of that, I'm going to make lines on paper or I'm going to make digital art with flowy pixels or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's a benefit to the latter, though. A personal benefit. Not that you're doing it for that, but I think there's a benefit in. I don't want to get too hokey, but you tap into things. I think when you're extracting or expressing something creatively, when you're creating, when you're building, that causes a series of reactions. So I think there's a benefit to you personally more than doom scrolling versus creating.
Okay, so I'm going to put doom scrolling as the so far rank infinity.
Infinity last.
Yeah, and so if one is the thing that you should do right now, infinity, let's just say a million. I have less than a million items, but this is item 1 million on the list. It's doom scrolling. And probably like item number 900,999 is non-doom scrolling. Am I reading you correctly here?
I would say something creative. I would say music in terms of leisure pursuits that are both sort of brain dumps, getaways, but also provide you value. Um, I would say it's very high on the list, whether it's drawing or playing music. Those are very high on your leisure pursuit. Should
All
be
right,
very high.
I'm gonna put those as tied for first place right now.
And I would say
Room could
even,
change, but tied for first place at the moment.
yeah, that's fair. I would say rank them very high. And I think even if you have to develop a bit of a painful discipline structure around those things, you enjoy them as pleasure, but there's such a benefit for you from that it should be ranked highly ranked highly.
Sorry, my tea fell out of my mouth. It was gross.
No worries.
There's peels in there. They're good.
That sounds like
Um,
a true proper tea.
it's some jar that came from the Asian grocery store that my wife brought home, and it had instructions for how to make hot tea and how to make soda out of the same goopy gel. It was great. There's a name for it. I just don't know what it is.
I don't. Well, I have to backpedal
You
here
wouldn't
with,
you wouldn't want to you wouldn't want to drink this. It's very high in sugar,
yeah,
but the
and I
sugar
heard
comes from honey.
still sugar, but I heard goopy gel, and that's what turned me off more
Yeah,
than the
goopy
sugar.
honey gel. Mm. All right. So there we go. Would you have a second category you'd like to choose here?
Oh,
I'll
now see,
remind you: gracefully, emotional acumen, society, house, and
emotional acumen.
okay.
Sorry.
Formally journal,
Okay.
whatever that means as far as the level of rigor, but formally keep a journal.
Lower.
Lower. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a surprise.
Yeah. Lower.
All right, so we have music, time, and draw more are both tied for first. So
For
I'll
sure.
rest third place now.
For sure.
What's your thought process here against ranking journaling higher?
Um, I think I think that if done correctly, or I don't want to say correctly, if done purposefully and with intent, both drawing and playing music will capture, maybe in different forms, but will capture what you're trying, what the benefits of journaling will be captured in both drawing and in creating music. But there are benefits beyond journaling that you get from both.
That's clever. So journaling falls down the list because it's not a twofer. It's a
It's not a
unitasker.
twofer, and it's a, I feel like a less sophisticated way to do the same thing than expressing those, because ultimately if you're journaling, you're not just trying to get a number of words down on a paper, you're trying to capture thoughts or capture emotions. And they're both, drawing and creating music are much more creative ways of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna have a visual journal where I draw, I'm gonna make my enemies into a potato man, and then just draw different suffering for them for weeks on end.
So you're probably halfway in just saying that, but I think there are the things that you would do in a journal. You could do very sophisticated, clever creations, visual creations that would probably get you deeper into what you're trying to, what you're trying to capture, the sentiment, the emotion, the recollection, whatever that is that you're trying to capture. I think you'll get a much richer experience with that. Horrible description, but a much richer experience with drawing or with music. Both.
So, all right. So, this itch will be. I'm going to say the journaling itch will be scratched with something else.
I think so. But you could have somebody that would explain why journaling is a key and insightful, or a very utilitarian way to do exactly what I just explained. And I could be convinced that that's the case. I just think there, as I described it, the comparison between the two stands.
Okay. Do you want something next up? I'll pick for you. But do you want something that is
You pick.
closely related? Yeah. All right. I'll pick, but help me narrow it down. Do you want something that's closely related to something we've already talked about, or an example that we haven't brought up yet
Yeah,
in
hard
the
left.
discipline discussion? Hard left. Okay. This is from the category I prefer to spend on experiences. Um, the item here is in quotes, travel more.
God.
Do you see what I'm getting at here?
Yes. I'll
I
have
wasn't sure how
superficial experiences for 1,000, please. Not that
I wasn't sure how explicit I was going to need to be on this one.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. Experiences, family or individual?
Okay, so where I came up with this travel more, the where my head was at was how frequently you hear somebody who is looking forward to their eventual retirement. Maybe it's impending and you're asking them what they're up to. Like, I'd just like to travel more, maybe see some more of the world. And I'm like, well, what's stopping you from doing that now? Because I don't feel like it's your job. I don't feel like it's the fact that you're not yet retired. I feel like something else is in the way. Number one. So that's on the what's actually preventing you from traveling more. The other side of it is, what exactly are you imagining when you make that kind of a response? Like, what do you think you're going to be getting out of that future thing that you're holding yourself back from now somehow? And it's fascinating to me.
So I think the question is that, and um, what does procrastinating or pushing that off to some future nebulous time? What is the reason that a person does that today?
Yeah.
Is that a defense mechanism? Is it a way to keep at bay? Um, you know, because if you admit that there's nothing that stops you from trying to reach your dreams, or trying to reach not your dreams, but to execute on the things that you think would truly make you happy, well, then you're on the hook for the execution. You're on the hook to do it. And
Yeah.
I think that is the barrier. Oh, I would love to do this, but I've got this thing that keeps me from doing it. When in actuality, it's, I would love to do that, but then I would have to do it. And I think that's what keeps people from, I think that's a potential explanation for that comment.
My desire to travel more is very much tied up in identity and self-image. So I want to be the type of person who has been places. I want to be worldly. I don't want to be small-minded. For a long time it really bugged me that I live, you know, 15 miles or less from where I was born. Now I haven't lived here my whole life. I moved around as a kid, but I landed not far from where I was born.
And
I
that's fine.
Well, for a long
And
time, I
that's
had a real
fine.
problem with that. I was like, this makes me a townie. This makes me a local yokel. This makes me, unable to get out of my own backyard. But the more time I spent traveling to different places and hearing from other people who had traveled to all different places, I told you my dad's a pilot. I had an uncle who was a pilot as well. Talking to retired pilots, not necessarily those two guys, but talking to retired pilots or, longtime machinery salespeople who described their travels as, well, I pretty much get to see the inside of an airplane, and then I get to see an
A
airport, and then I
hotel.
get to see a hotel room, and then I get to see a windowless conference room. So, I mean, I've been all over, but I'm not sure what difference it makes. I feel like that derpy voice was kind of unfair to these guys. And I do mean guys, like it almost
Yeah.
exclusively in this case. But yeah, so once I had seen it a couple different ways and had an opportunity to, I mean, like I'll pick on Kentucky, right? Like I had the opportunity to have a nice time for 2 nights in Kentucky, and it wasn't a better or worse time than I had in Chicago, and it wasn't a better or worse time than I had in New York City, and it wasn't a better or worse time than I had in Mexico. All of them were a mixture of, the place, the plan, the people, the
You.
weather, the reason you're there. And you could have a nice time in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania for an afternoon if if all of the rest of the stuff lines up. You can have an absolutely miserable time in Vegas or in Los Angeles or in San Francisco or like all these other places that are, glorious on paper. And so that's when I started to decouple, where I live from the extent to which I'm worldly. I'm still scared. I'm scared of international travel. Not all of it, but
Have you
going
been?
going without a fixer.
Have you been overseas?
Yeah. I've been to Europe a couple times, but it's been a long time. I've been to Mexico, but it's been a number of years. Uh all the European trips were either pure tourism or seeing family. My wife's family is English, and the Mexico trip was for work. I've never been to Asia, never been to Africa. There's a lot of the world that I haven't been to, and feel like while I would enjoy a trip there, the undertaking that would require is like I can't picture myself enjoying any of the process at all.
The process is a pain, and it's miserable. Here's my thing, though. I think I love that you brought this up. I really, really, really appreciate that you brought up the decoupling of being worldly, which is a state of mind and demonstrates intellectual curiosity and a number of things that are independent of where you reside or where you've been. But I think for the person who doesn't have those traits, you can say or give the impression that you're worldly because you've checked a number of countries off your visa or off your passport. And I think that's such an important point because I have been to a number of countries, and it I'm I like to go to different places because I like to experience the culture of the people who live there. I want to know that there are people that are doing the same thing we're doing here
Right.
in their version of it there. And I don't get caught up. I do like architecture. I like to see those things. But I think we make too much of a deal out of that. I feel like we make too much of a deal out. I think the point of travel is to experience what other people experience, living that parallel life to yours,
Right.
just in a different place with different customs and different morals and
And
different
just a different
things
place.
in a different place.
I,
Yeah.
this is, I think, my consummate trip. So when I hear a suburban late middle-aged couple discussing how they'll retire and travel more, I'm picturing a tour bus.
That's
And when
that's
and when I am
exactly it.
and when I imagine my ideal itinerary to almost anywhere, it is like ideally I'm staying with somebody I know, whether that's in a hotel or at their house or in an Airbnb. Um, but I'm staying with them, and the day consists of as much of what they would normally do on like a weekend as
Yes.
possible, and maybe a little bit of sightseeing, but like take me to the place where you would go to hang out, not to a tourist trap. And if the place you would go and hang out happens to be a tourist trap, so like in DC, uh,
Which you
the
very kindly did for my son and I,
right, but
and
like the
that was
reason, like
appreciated.
we drove past the Korean War Memorial and the Vietnam War Memorial and the White House and the Washington Monument, and I'm not like, as I'm showing you this stuff, I'm not like, and this is a place where all the tourists hang out. I'm like, and that's the field where the softball leagues are, and that's the field where they play kickball, right? And like, it's just a place to go that's down the street from my house that's a little bit more interesting than suburban tract homes, which I have nothing to show you there. But if I'd have showed you guys what the boulevard I lived on was, that would have been a perfectly acceptable equivalent to that. And if I didn't, if I lived 45 minutes from the city and I was like, I'll take you into the city, but I never went there, that would kind of fall flat.
So, and this is not hyperbole, the past 5 minutes in this conversation have been worth doing this whole podcast.
What do you mean?
I mean, like this is why I wanted to do this. And I
Okay.
swear to God,
All
like
right.
not
I believe
hyperbole.
you. I believe you.
There were like three different points that you made there, which I've thought about but haven't formalized. And it's exactly, I feel like that is a box to check off of my curiosity or my life, like things that I want to satisfy that I understand. And the softball fields comment is exactly right. And
Listen. Go ahead. Sorry.
and the what you explained on vacation, because I just did that and I didn't formalize why I did that. Last year I went to Spain by myself
Mm-hmm.
for 10 days. And I didn't go to any touristy traps. I picked like this blue collar. It's called Villa Joyosa. It's in Alicante. It's on the Mediterranean, but it's a proper working class Spanish town. There is some tourism there, but I just spent 10 days living how they lived, as best as a intermediate at best speaking Spanish person can live. And I loved every second of it. I didn't do any touristy trap stuff. I did in Madrid just to see it, but that is exactly this was a very freeing conversation for me. I appreciate it tremendously.
I took this trip to San Francisco a couple weeks ago for I mean, it was business, but I was staying with a friend and basically was like shadowing him for the whole time I was there. So I show up. He was going to pick me up from the airport, but then he had a meeting, so I took the train. This was based on having been to San Francisco, knowing the train decently well. But it'd been 4 or 5 years since I was there. So I take the train from the airport. He's 10 or 15 minutes from a train station, so I get like the typical. He comes home from a work trip and he takes the same route. So I go and see him, and we have leftovers that his wife had made, and then we walk the dog, and then he's like, okay, we have just enough time to go, like, we're going to go do this hike that usually I run, that's also the dog walk. So then we go up to, we get this great vantage point over the city, and I'm seeing the views, but this is the normal This would normally be his trail running route. I just said I didn't want to run because we've already talked about that. So I didn't want to run, but we did the trail running route for the purpose of walking the dog. Go grab dinner. That part was normal. The next day, like one of the days that we were there, his buddy came by and they have like backyard gym and they had their workout routine. And I'm like, no, I'm not participating in that also. But I got to talk with this guy who's friends of his wife and now they're workout buddies. And he's like riding this bike that he designed and built himself. This isn't chronological, so but I'm not sure that really matters. At one point, there's a famous bakery that he happens to live around the corner from. So when I land at my friend's house, my wife texts me, having tracked my location on my phone, and she's like, "You are around the corner from Tartine. You didn't tell me that you were staying there." I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I landed safe and good to hear from you.
Get me some bread.
Yeah. So like we go to that place, which is a tourist trap, but the reason we went to it is because it is, as my host said, that is the closest source of food to where he lives. So he goes there all the time. And that was a lot better than if we had sought it out, because then it's like, then you gotta like seek it out. And that whole like, what does this guy's couple of work days look like? And how much traffic do you have to sit in, and what's the place to go get food? The thing that was the two pieces that were most striking for me during that trip was he didn't have any kids, so his life is totally flipped upside down from mine is, in terms of noise in the house, and how much, not free time, but how much time that is not, every little minute is occupied by a screaming person shitting their pants, as an example. And so that, just like a breath of fresh air of like, what do you do for fun? Well, I sit here in my living room and I listen to music. I'm like, well, that's not a thing I've done recently. And so that was really nice. And then the other thing is, it's been a long time since I lived in like a built up urban area. I've lived in built up close in suburbs for a long time. So getting a flavor of, this is, basically as urban as San Francisco living is going to get. That was a nice, not necessarily breath of fresh air, but certainly like a return to a very different style of living than I have now. So that two things, the there aren't any kids here, and you live in the city, those two things by themselves was great for a 3-day stretch of like, this is just my life now, and it's not the life that I have at home, and it's not a vacation, and it's a work trip, but we only have 3 hours of stuff planned. And that was great. And it was a really nice little, pick me up and reset and, frame everything. And when I say I want to travel more, I don't really want to wait until I'm retired. I just want to take advantage of that kind of thing. And then also get my kids into this to where they have, some sense of
Experiences.
that. Yeah. And same thing with, with me and my wife. That particular trip, I mean, I'm not really sorry that I was traveling by myself to see my friend, but there are equivalents to that trip where I would love to have, a long weekend to just be someplace else with either my whole family or just with my wife. And that would be nice. So the item, uh, as proposed, would basically be just figure out a way to make that happen, whether that's have a 12-month plan, or have a budget that's explicit for it, or like lay out the list of trips, like whatever it is, apply discipline to, you know, wanderlust dreams.
So my good friend, and I love that. Rank that very high.
Okay. I'm just going to write the word high next
High,
to it.
yeah, very high. My drummer and good friend of 25 years. He's an IT executive, and he and his wife and their daughter, the three of them, every year at Christmas time, he and his wife do this for each other as their mutual Christmas gifts. But they put a series of like 10 destinations in a hat, and they let their daughter pick out where it is that they're going. And then that's their week vacation for the following summer or
Cool.
the following fall. So somewhere along those lines. And then they plan for it, both financially and what they want to do, and kind of how they want to divvy out that time. They do that over the course of the next, 8 months or 10 months, whatever it is.
Here's my last sidebar on traveling. A long time ago, so a lot of my real goals started out as just something flippant and smart alecky. I'm sure that's a real shock to you. At one point, and this was like way before the pandemic, probably early 2010s. I'd been working long enough to kind of like have found a groove, but it was still pretty junior. I'm like, I want to work from a sailboat while I circumnavigate the globe. That was like my big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And I thought about it some more. And my approach to this was, well, my job needs the internet and a laptop, and I can do the rest of it from a sailboat. So, like, why not sail around the world? And then I got to thinking more, and my wife had some comments, and I was like, I'm not a super strong swimmer. I'm basically afraid of large waves, and sometimes I'm just afraid of the ocean. Like when I stand on the beach in Hawaii and I look out, I'm like, wow, there's nothing out there but ocean. I just become filled with fear and dread.
An ocean that can take you in a second too, like, very powerful body.
So it was becoming clear that I probably wasn't cut out for sailing. I was more of a sit in a sailboat in the slip kind of guy, which at that point just have a friend with a boat.
For
But
sure.
what I realized in this self exploration was that what I wanted was I just didn't want to be tied down to a 9 to 5 and go into work at an office. I just wanted to have flexibility, because there was then like the iteration of this, or the evolution of that, became, I think it would be great if we just summered at the lake. You know, I didn't have a lake in mind. I just thought it would be cool to be summering at the lake, and like I'll work at the lake and we'll summer, like, it'll be, I'll still have a normal job. It'll be a 9 to 5 ish job, but then my evenings, instead of being at my boring house in my boring suburb, will be at the lake. And, I can take a dip in those limestone lined, you know, deep creek lakes. It'll be great. And I had this whole vision lined up in my head. And this dream hasn't actually been dashed yet. And so I think the way it's looking now is, my brother lives in Portland. I'm in DC. I think next summer I'm just going to take my older kid. We're going to do 1 week of camp and 1 week of, tourism and hiking or whatever else. So I'll work for a week while he's in a day camp in Portland, and then we'll have, like, fun time. And so the 2 weeks, or more than 2 weeks, who knows how it shakes out, but having that long stretch of somewhere else time, I think, is basically like an incremental step towards what used to be my sailboat goal and then became my lake goal. But I don't actually need to be at the lake. I don't really need to summer at the lake. I just want to have the feeling of getting to go places, have, fun summer stuff for the kids, and not feel like I squandered the summer, essentially, like that by being stuck at home and then only having my, 1 week road trip or whatever. So that's my
Yeah.
other travel story.
Well, I think you in your, what was this, an afterthought in that whole conversation, was the point that you make, which is a good one, which I think that the whole concept of travel is essentially a mask or a parallel for independence, and it's the
There you go.
ability to do what you want when you want.
That's
And
right.
um, I think maybe, and that's like a realization as of 3 minutes ago, but I think maybe that's when folks, obviously there's an identity piece, that when, couple X or person X is talking about how they want to travel, that's one thing. But I think it's the air of independence that it, exudes, intentionally or otherwise. And I think those of us who like to travel, obviously the culture piece is one of it, but it's also the aspect of independence. It's, you get to do what you want when you want to do it.
Yeah, what I want isn't the thing. What I want is the way I imagine I'm going to feel when I do the thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Next, you have. I'm gonna narrow it down to two categories. You can have house and home, or society. Which one do you want me to pick from?
Ooh, let's try society.
Okay. Go to church, or start taking my kids to church, and or start taking my kids to church.
Very high.
It would probably be UU church, the Unitarians. That's my most likely place I'd
I,
go.
I, I think you should. And I think It's a broader conversation, but I think we talked about institutions a while back.
I think we're always
Institutions are,
talking about institutions.
we are, yeah, it's a good point. It's a fair point. But I think the institution of church, I feel like, in there are a bunch of reasons, but I feel like it's very important. I feel like your children should at least be exposed to it. Um, if for no other reason, then it's a huge part of our collective humanity's past.
Yeah.
Um, and on top of that, it's one of the pillars of community, and we're running out of them. But it's one of the pillars of community that I think have been important again for humanity, and whether or not they want to be a part of that, or it's too much a relic,
Yeah.
um, for them to take it seriously, I think they should at least be exposed to it. Plus, I think there are all sorts of tools if a church is done right. Whatever the denomination, whatever the religion, it doesn't matter. Done right, I think there are tools for how to live your life that if you can filter through, some of the sort of relics of church past, there are a lot of things that help you live your life healthily and with purpose and with meaning. And so I think there are many reasons why the discipline of church would be good for you and your family.
Do you want to know a life hack reason why it's good? I don't mean this to poo poo all of your very good and serious answers,
You're
but
like, I
just a
can
but a
network.
more of a no a yes and it's not that, it's much smaller than that. It's always the same time. It never
Yeah.
changes. It's always the same time.
Yeah.
Like if you clear out your 9:30 to 10:30 or 9:45 to 10:45 or whatever Sunday mornings, every Sunday morning from now until forever, you'll be golden. Just make it
Yeah.
like brushing your teeth. There's a
Yeah.
reason they do it that way.
You, for that same reason,
For that exact
it's
reason.
it becomes habit.
Yeah.
I
All right.
and
So
I'm all for it. I'm rank it high.
okay. It's been downgraded from very high to high. So where we stand is music time and draw more are tied for first place. Travel more is very high. Go to church is high. Uh, Formal journaling is lower than all of those
Yeah.
because
Yes.
music and
Yes.
art will be better. Uh, Doom scrolling is in last place, and regular non-doom scrolling is in second to last place.
And where is I'm gonna start watching Instagram for the educational videos and then doom scroll, because that's a thing too.
I'm pretty good about that actually.
Really?
So I tend not to. All right, so I had like my worst doom scrolling. Well, my worst doom scrolling was Twitter. Uh, like Twitter politics doom scrolling. So that was the worst. But then the second
Yeah.
worst was I followed this account. I think it was probably OSHA. Is this okay? But it was industrial accidents, like video of industrial
Ooh.
accidents. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why are you watching this stuff? And then I'm like, well, I mean, safety is real. And in factories, people like slip up because A, there's personal reasons, and B, there's institutional reasons, and C, there's systemic reasons. And being a safety conscious contributor to industry means you have to have like your safety hat on all of the time forever because people are getting maimed and killed, right? So that was my rationale for even following the account in the first place. But there's only so many like dismemberings and
I want none of them.
body
One is too
trauma,
many.
and I that was the worst doom scrolling I ever had. But it's been years since I ever looked at any of that stuff. Then to where I am now is it's kind of messed up. It's twofold, mostly Instagram, sometimes TikTok. I I comedy scroll, so I'm looking for something funny,
Yeah.
and I like lifestyle voyeurism scroll. So I'm looking for people that are living in the woods or living out of a van or living off of a sailboat, the life I thought I wanted to have at that one point. And so watching people basically trying to get their daily lives, but their daily lives that are unique in some particular way. And that stuff I find mostly enlightening, mostly interesting, mostly valuable. It's just how much of that do you really need at any given time?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I do, which probably has negative value to my well-being and yet is also harmless all at the same time, is anytime I get ads for weird things from Amazon fed to me via one of these social media sites, I like scroll through the items and pick the weirdest ones that I don't know what they are or that I'm not. Yesterday, I got an ad for realistic simulation plastic corn. Yeah. Not on the cob, off the cob, corn off the cob, like niblets. And I'm like, what even? And I click through it. I'm like, oh, it's for fishing. It's bait. I'm being advertised bait. And I'm like, well, that's not even that interesting because I'm watching boat Instagram, and then they think that I want bait because I'm a fisherman. I don't want boat. I'm not a boat person. I'm just watching this stuff on Instagram. I'm not buying plastic corn. But I mean, obviously, that was a real winner for me because every time you click on realistic simulation plastic corn, that
You
algorithm is
get
going to make the
you
next
get
thing you get
more.
even weirder and
Yeah.
weirder and weirder and weirder.
You're getting more.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we haven't had any from
Do house and home.
house and home.
Yeah.
Okay. This one is tongue in cheek, but like eats at me. So I put it as the item is keep up my quote classic cars. So I have a 2011 Volkswagen, it runs fine, has just around 100,000 miles on it, not a turbo, 5-cylinder manual. So this car is potentially, unless it crashes, it will drive for a very long time, like probably another 10 or 15 years, and won't require more than a few $1,000s in maintenance over that time for any like big ticket items. However, the upholstery on the driver's seat recently started to flake and tear a little bit, and the headliner is sagging, and there's some scratches on the exterior. I would love to again, back to my identity. I'd love to be the type of person who has a classic car and keeps it up, but I already own a 12-year-old car and generally don't keep it up beyond the bare minimum. It's parked outside. The children ride in it. The headliner problem is unlikely to get solved. Should I change my whole game, treat the Volkswagen as a classic, and apply a little bit of discipline to fixing up the pieces of that car that will keep it on the road? Because all it takes is like, pulling the trigger on go find somebody that can fix that sagging headliner and just accept that it's going to be a painful $800 to $1,500 project. But now your headliner doesn't sag anymore.
Yeah, I think a one-time deal, sure.
Yeah,
I
but it's
mean,
never going to end. It's going to stay parked out there out front. I have to change my whole life and be like, now you're taking care of the car.
I say low. I mean, it's ahead of doom scrolling, but it's
It's a great way to rank it.
yeah, it's ahead of doom scrolling, but I don't know. I, so I will say this with a nuance, though. I think there are people, specifically in older generations, my father's generation, probably yours as well, where our play an instrument draw is their tinker on the car. And so I don't want to crap all over the whole process of that, because there's some people that it's very much an art form or a form of expression.
I'd like to
Or
be explicit here, though.
okay,
I don't think tinkering is high. Even if I were to do this, keep the car up in good shape, I can't see myself doing it directly. It's not going to be tinkering. It's going to be
outsourcing.
reading on the internet about how to get a headliner repaired. It's going to be, do I want to install an aftermarket backup camera to slightly modernize the car and keep me more interested in it for a couple more years instead of having to go buy a new car? Is it going to be, finding a body shop that I like for all of the future times that I bang it into curbs? These types of things. The tinkering, I just really I love the idea of a specialist who has taken a headliner off of a Volkswagen before. That panel, you got to get the whole thing. You got to
Yeah.
get the A panels. You got to get the C pillars. You got to take the whole thing out. It only fits one particular way. You have to pull it out the door. It's not the gluing a new piece of fabric on there that gets you. It's the disassembly and reassembly. Losing the little plastic
Always.
pins. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I had a friend, not even a friend. This is a guy that was on the robotics team that I'd coached for a while. He installed the stereo, the aftermarket stereo that I got in this car. Charged me like $700 or $800. Kept me updated on what was going on. Only had the car for a few days, and I've never been happier with outsourcing a project. Having installed a car radio before, I was like, I
Oh,
do not want to do that.
because there's a certain amount of patience involved in the teardown and the reassembly that it's a non-negotiable. Like
It has to be done.
and you have to be very patient. You have to be meticulous and have a dexterity that you can hold things in odd positions for long amounts of time, and like there's a it I want no part of any of that. I don't ever want to do any of that ever in my life. So I
That's why
say,
you went electric. You solved it.
yeah,
I
I say
think.
doom scroll before you tinker on your car.
Oh man, just downgraded. I had it ranked as squeaks just past doom scrolling, but I'm gonna downgrade that to possibly worse than doom scrolling.
Yeah, possibly. Ugh, and I think it's just my bad memories
Okay,
clouding my
I have an
vision.
adjacent one. Oh, actually, no. There's two more good ones in House and Home. Hmm, I'm gonna do one that's a little bit out of line with the rest of this stuff, but then it is in line with what we just talked about in outsourcing. My wife, well, I'll give you the item. It's pay for weekly house cleaners.
Uh, I do it too.
Right.
It
So the backstory here is for Mother's Day, my wife was like, I want you to get me cleaners because I don't want to have to think about cleaning the house. We had twice a month cleaners. Um, Somewhere in the process of trying to find a house cleaner, and probably because one of my home assistants overheard this conversation, then I started getting fed social media videos of wives who had made the same request that they wanted to get cleaners. And then the husband said, what do you mean? I'll just do it myself.
yeah,
Which then led to the husband taking 4 hours on a weekend to pawn the children off on the spouse while doing the cleaning poorly. And now the wife who just wanted to have cleaners instead has a husband who's being stubborn, doing it themselves, is completely unavailable, and has literally made another chore
yeah,
for the spouse who asked for
yeah,
a different solution to the problem.
yeah. I think it's a wise investment, just because, again, if you have, I've recently done it myself in my house for the first time in like 12 years, just because I had it's a long story, but it's good to be connected with it again, if for no other reason than to know that I hate it. I think if you can free up time to pursue these other creative pursuits with your family, with your wife, for you, and getting a cleaner twice a month or 3 times a month, whatever it ends up being, absolutely a good investment.
When I became self-employed, the calculation of how much work I could land in the 4 hours it took me to clean the house. So I don't know, it costs maybe like $150 to $200 each time somebody cleans the house. Generally, they bring 3 or 4 people to our house, and they're done in 45 minutes to an hour and a half at the outside. So, like, logically, these times are full time. These people are full time professionals. I'm a not gifted amateur. So, minimum, it takes me 3 hours to do as good a job as they do. That 3 hours makes, like, if I had spent that on almost anything I could be doing as a self-employed person, I'm either going to be saving my self-employed business or drumming up my self-employed business dramatically more money
Yeah,
than I'm paying for the 4 people to come and clean the house.
yeah,
That was put into extremely stark contrast. So the thing that has to change now is I have to make a coherent plan here to where the percentage of the monthly budget being consumed by cleaners is actually reasonable as opposed to over the top.
Yeah,
I thought you'd like that one.
I do. I like it a lot.
Okay,
Uh,
so that one is just that's not even your ranking of that is not really even on the list. Just do it.
20-second sidebar. Have you seen the video of the cleaning robot that is now being deployed at gas stations and hospitals and places like that?
No, does it work?
It really works.
I've always thought that the best solution to that is build a waterproof bathroom and then hose the whole thing down like a car wash.
The challenge for me, not to get into a cleaning discussion, but the challenge for me is I don't like chemicals. Like I don't want to breathe the stuff in that most people use to clean shower stalls and toilets and those sorts of things.
Elbow grease will kill you.
That's what I'm saying. So it has to be, you have to use, and luckily my cleaner has been accommodating that way. It was her idea too, but something that is not going to damage your lungs, but that also cleans appropriately for the thing that it's being used to clean for. And that's the balance. The robot solves, I feel like, because there's unlimited pressure in,
Yeah,
a linear cylinder or whatever it is that's powering the robotic arm.
right.
So,
Robots coming to clean your home.
yeah, they were supposed to have been here 5 years ago, but it looks like there might be progress.
Okay, let's wrap it up with a slam dunk. Under emotional acumen, we covered journaling. My other item under emotional acumen was meditate. After this conversation, so last time we talked, you said it was going to be meditate. Like that was going to be number one. So do you stand by this ranking? Meditate is number one. Drawing and music time would then be number two. Travel more would be next. I lost track of numbers, but travel more would be next. Keeping up classic cars falls far by the wayside. Paying for cleaners is not even ranked because it's so obvious. Doom scrolling is last, and non-doom scrolling is second to last. Do you still feel comfortable with that ranking?
I do, and even more so to double down on it, the meditation will make all of the rest of that brighter, more vibrant. You'll understand what you're doing. There will be little discipline involved with those other things with the addition of meditation.
Can I
So,
ask a couple of pragmatic questions about that?
yeah.
How long will it take before I feel the result of the rest of my life falling into focus?
So we talked about this when I talked about my son and running and how we didn't think he should look at what I do and judge what he needs to do tomorrow by what I do now. And I think the same is somewhat applicable for you in that see what tomorrow feels like. And then the next day and the next day. And then this is how I describe meditation every single time to the 150 people that I've talked to about it is you string together a series of days where you're not sure if this is right or that's right or am I doing this right. You get to increment of time X, 6 months, a year, whatever it is, some period of time after, beyond. If you're fully dedicated to it, fully committed to it, and you're doing it, you get to some period of time, 6 months or a year down the road, and you look back and you're like, holy hell, I am a different person. This is all very different now. And you don't realize it during the course of the day. It's like you've seen the videos where the dad takes a picture of his daughter from the time that she's 2 months old till the time that she's getting married, and those daily transformations you miss. You don't appreciate the subtle differences, but if you look at year 3 and look back at a side by side comparison with year 0 starting point, there's a huge difference. And I think the same thing applies to meditation. You get to a certain point, you're like, oh, wow, this is different. I used to react that way to this situation, or I used to feel this way in this situation, and you just don't. And that compounds over time.
I
So
feel like I've made a large number of somewhat to exceptionally long-term commitments to things that I'm just going to do forever now. And we won't rehash them. I think we've covered most of them throughout the discipline discussion. So I'm gonna commit to 3 months and I'm not even going to ask how's it going until the only question for the first 3 months will be, did you do it?
Are you doing it? Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's it. Did you do it or did you not do it? If I didn't do it after 3 months, then the clock starts over. So if I
Yeah.
haven't done it, then got to start over and start the 3 months again. After 3 months, 12 weeks, that's not so long. We will say the meditation episode, revisiting
Yeah.
discipline, and we'll see how it went.
Love it. And
How many how
that's
many
a
do I have to do this 40 minutes a day, or is 20 minutes a day once a day going to be enough?
two times a day, twice a day, 20 minutes each time.
Fuck. Okay. Let's see how this
Again,
goes for 12 weeks.
you did a nice job of timelining the amount of time spent brushing one's teeth.
I
That's
don't have an issue with I don't there is enough time in my day to
there
spend 40
is.
minutes
Yeah.
on this, especially given that it actually takes less time to prepare for than brushing your teeth. You just
Yeah.
you're do,
You flop over where you're at and do it. Yeah.
you're doing it. Yeah. So it's possible. I think predictions for this will be I either like it or I like it but feel like it takes too long. Those are going to be basically what I think the options are now, which may be totally out to lunch, but that's how I think I'm going to feel about it the next time we revisit this.
I want to present a potential third option.
Okay.
I think after 3 months, possibly a little bit longer, but after 3 months, I like it as not a strong enough
Oh, you
explanation.
think it's going to be a home run after 3 months?
I think there's a possibility. You're a bright guy. You're a very bright guy. You're measured. You're self aware. You're seeking. You're all the ingredients are there for this to be a really nice cake. That's all I'm gonna say.
No other criteria required here. Just do
Nope.
20 minutes a day, twice a day
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
3 months. Okay.
Correct. Correct.
If you think of anything that I needed to have like shuffled to oops, we forgot about that one other thing, just let me know. But
No, that's
I feel
it.
like I like the simplicity.
Yeah, that's it. And I feel like the other part of this for you, and again, this is looking back, a rear view assessment of where you started and where you've come from, that all the other things that we've talked about under discipline, maybe you're not doing them all, but those things are easier. Those things are easier to, as you unpack the junk, the things that you want to do become easier to do.
That would be a great benefit. I would really like the rest of the discipline to be easy. All right, so Terry's superpower,
Easier.
not Terry's superpower. That's separate. This is Terry's super habit.
Yes, it's
Terry's mental super habit.
correct.
You heard it here first. Should I
Super
synth this
habit.
out? Should I synth this out? You want some deep synths?
I want a low frequency.
How low? Real low or just low?
I like the toxic sludge bit.
Okay, let me see if I can get real deep. Oh, I gotta turn the volume up. Oh, that's pretty deep.
I hear it. I hear it.
That's pretty deep. It's kind of downer though. It's kind of a downer. That's a little better.
Yeah. That's definitely the end of the rave. Everybody's Molly has worn off. It's the end of the night.
See you in 3 months to talk about meditation. Who knows what's going to happen between now and then?
3 months or tomorrow, whichever comes first.
Bye, Terry.
Have a good night, man.